that problem without addressing long and indeterminate sentences. Perhaps one of the cruelest forms of long and indeterminate sentences is juvenile life without parole, where someone makes a mistake when they're a child and ends up being sentenced to life without parole in prison. So our next panel is talking about juvenile life without parole, and I'm going to turn the microphone over to them now.
Good afternoon. I am Eric Alexander, and I serve as Senior Advocate for the Campaign for the Fair Sentencing of Youth, a national nonprofit that leads efforts to ban life without parole and other extreme sentences for children, and instead utilize age-appropriate, trauma-informed alternatives that focus on the unique rehabilitative potential of children. Through partnerships with advocacy organizations like those present today, businesses, and other stakeholders, the CFSY supports survivors of and people who have lost loved ones to youth violence, those incarcerated as children who are still serving, those who have been released, and their respective families and communities. Again, thank you for joining us to discuss the issue of juvenile life without parole and its impact on the families and communities here in Michigan. I am joined today by Ms. Felecia Waters, Democratic Senator Jeff Irwin, and reentry specialist Jose Burgos. As momentum to abolish sentences for children swept the country, Michigan now has the highest number of children serving life without the possibility of parole in the country. Since 2012, the number of states banning life without parole sentences have quintupled, from 5 to 25. States as diverse as Texas, Oregon, Arkansas, California, West Virginia, Vermont, the Dakotas, Wyoming, Maryland, Utah, Virginia, Utah, and DC, what an extensive list, have abolished life without parole as a sentencing option for people under the age of 18. An additional 6 states have no one serving the sentence. National reform and abolition of these sentences has not been a partisan issue. Both Democrats and Republicans have agreed that children should not be treated as adults. Our first panelist is author of legislation that addresses the issue. So our first question is for him. Senator Irwin, why is this issue important to you as a lawmaker?
Yeah, thank you, Eric, and thank you all for being here. This issue is important to me as a lawmaker because we need to end mass incarceration in this state and in this country. It's a priority to me. But also, back when I was in the State House of Representatives, that's when the U.S. Supreme Court issued that ruling almost 10 years ago in Miller v. Alabama, saying that sentencing a juvenile to life without any opportunity of parole, any opportunity for rehabilitation, any opportunity for review is unconstitutional. It's cruel and unusual punishment. And that struck me as true and just and right. And so as a state representative, I started watching what was happening in our counties. And I thought, of course, immediately our justice system would respond to this and would do the right thing. But here we are, 10 years later, we still have juveniles in Michigan that have been sentenced to these awful sentences that are cruel and unusual punishment. We still have these terrible laws on our books, and that's why I felt an obligation to fix these laws, to change them, to bring them in accordance with the Constitution, and also, at the risk of going on a little too long, mass incarceration is not just immoral, it's not just unjust, it's not just morally wrong that Michigan has some of the longest prison sentences in the country, it's also extremely expensive. And I saw this as an opportunity to work across the aisle with colleagues that were more conservative than me to stoke the coals on their interest in redemption, yes, but also their interest in saving money. Because right now we're holding on to people way too long at great cost to the people here in the state of Michigan. So that's why I started working on this legislation. And I just want to mention before I give up the mic that when I started working on this, I was very happy to be able to work with a bipartisan group of legislators. And we've introduced legislation to end juvenile life without parole here in Michigan, to make sure that all juveniles who are convicted have a chance to get in front of the parole board. And we've done that with a bipartisan group. So it's myself and my Democratic senator colleague, Senator Santana, and then 2 of our Republican colleagues, Senator Vanderwall and Senator McDonald. Thank you.
So there are a lot of misconceptions about children who enter the adult prison system, spend decades there, return to their communities. Often we overlook their ability to be leaders and contributors to society. Our next panelist has made it his mission to welcome those men and women home and ensure that their first steps of freedom are footsteps in the right direction. I present to you reentry specialist Jose Burgos.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. When I was coming here thinking about what to talk about, what we're going to address here, I had to mention, why for me this is so important. Like last week sometime I received an email from one of the guys that are still incarcerated, Juvenile Life, who had got resentenced. He sent me a simple one sentence letter. He said, Jose, he said, I've been resentenced to life without parole again. I'm just gonna continue doing what I was doing, you know what I'm saying? And as I was reading that, man, I was like, this is a person who went in as a child, 15 years old, who was sentenced to life without parole. And then for 10 years, he held on to hope. For 10 years, he did exactly what they told him to do, you know what I'm saying? And 10 years later, after the Miller decision, they literally, snatched the spirit out of his soul, you know what I'm saying? Resentenced him to a life without parole again. Re-traumatizing him, because he waited for 10 years for just to be told that he was going to be given a life without parole sentence again. And so that's why I'm here on a personal basis. Professionally, as a reentry specialist, one of the things that I do is I make sure that those that are in the process of coming home, getting resentenced, that they have all the resources that they need. Even though the resources here in the state are very limited, I make sure. My phone number is available to these guys 24/7. You know what I'm saying? Just next week, I got a guy coming home who's going to North Carolina, Juvenile Life, who did serve 40 years. I'm going to fly him out to North Carolina to be with his family. But for me, I want to make sure, man, that these guys have what it takes to succeed out here. Just to show those that told us at the age of 15 and 16 that we were never going to amount to nothing. You know what I'm saying? That we're showing them different. We're showing them different. I want to be, help others become examples for those who are coming behind them. You know what I'm saying? And there's a lot of great men and women who are coming home from prison after decades of incarceration and are doing great. And I think that's what we want them to do. You know what I'm saying? And that's what this type of legislation will give them an opportunity to do, to come out here and be the successful men and women that many have shown them to be. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Mr. Burgos. You just talked about resources, and there's one very important resource for this community, and it's the resource of family. Families spend decades fighting for the teenager turned middle-aged loved one in hope that one day they would have an opportunity to show how much they've changed. Sadly, individuals serving these sentences often lose their entire support system while serving decades of incarceration. Our next panelist has a very inspiration story, one of hope. Mrs. Waters, would you mind telling us what brought you to this issue?
Okay, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's truly an honor to be a part of this panel. Safe and Just Michigan is dedicated and committed, and they have a great team of warriors. So it's a tremendous honor just to sit on this panel. Their passion and commitment to securing the possibility of freedom for all juveniles who have served indeterminate sentences have not gone unnoticed. When I was 7 years old, my parents owned a small convenience store in Pontiac. As a child, I worked there, and it was my responsibility as a 7-year-old to pass out penny candy. A lot of you may not know anything about that. I'm kind of telling my age with that, but it was my job to do penny candy. It was a 10-year-old, kind of tall, skinny boy with a sweet tooth and $1 million smile. He came in the store and he had 10 cents. And he said, if you give me a couple of pieces of extra candy, I promise to marry you one day. So as he requested, I gave him a couple of pieces of candy, but as a 7-year-old, my response was, yuck. So, as children, we do have a degree of empathy. However, our understanding and experiences are somewhat limited. So as we get older and we mature, we learn and we gain more understanding and a deeper level of compassion and empathy for others. When I was a teenager, my best friend was arrested and later sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. He was 17 years old. He was sent to prison to die. Now, while he was in there, every 5 years, he would have to report to the parole board, not necessarily go in front of them, because there was no interest. Unfortunately, back then, the laws for juveniles sentenced to life without parole went unnoticed. There was no real empathy. There was no interest. Fast forward 20 years, because of my experience with my best friend being sentenced to life without parole, I worked with the group called the ACLU, and I was one of the founding members of the Second Chance for Youth. This is a grassroots organization, and they were dedicated to helping juveniles like my friend. With this group, we were instrumental in getting the juvenile lifers, getting it seen for everyone to see that this was inhumane, and this was a violation of their constitutional rights. I discovered many of the juveniles over the years had matured, like my friend. They were remorseful for their acts that they committed as children. They were not the same person they were when they entered prison. A lot of you probably are familiar with a Bible verse. It says, when I was a child, and I'm paraphrasing, when I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. But when I became an adult, I put those childish things behind me. And this is true for a lot of our juvenile lifers. They're not the same person they were when they went into prison. My friend was fortunate while he was in prison to have a loving mother, strong family ties, and me, of course, to support him. Over the years, he spent 40 years in prison. We wrote letters for over 40 years. We visited over 20 correctional facilities for over 40 years, dealing with some of the correctional officers for 40 years, some not so nice. We accepted collect calls for over 40 years. We provided financial assistance for over 40 years. So over the decades, he had a support system. Many of the juvenile lifers do not. So it's up to us as a community to support our juvenile lifers, whether it be with the legislation or just the individual. We do need to support our juvenile lifers. We have to empathize with their plight to do life without parole. We believe in empathy, and we believe empathy is a verb. That means you got to put what you believe into action. For my friend, we worked on uplifting his spirit. We planted seeds of hope and nourished his never give up mindset and attitude. Together, we had the audacity to believe that one day he would be free. Many of the juveniles who are serving life lose their support system after a few years. And it is a duty of us as friends, as family, as community, to keep going and keep fighting the good fight, as my friend Dear Woods usually says. We have to be a voice for the voiceless, for our men and women behind bars. There's a quote by Ronnie Brown. It says, empathy has no script. There's no right or wrong way to do it. It's simply listening, holding space without judgment, being emotionally connecting, and communicating that incredibly healing message that you are not alone. Getting back to that 10-year-old who wanted some extra candy, he's here today. Would you guys like to see him? Come on up. And now I'm really telling my age. Fast forward 50 years from that 10-year-old. His name is Ronnie Waters. You heard a little snippet of his story. Yes, he was incarcerated as a juvenile for over 40 years. He kept the faith, but now he's free. When he came home, he obtained employment in less than 6 weeks. And he should not be defined by the act that he committed over 40 years ago. I recognize him as a man of hope, a man of strength, a man of integrity, a man full of joy and love, and most of all, a man who keeps his word. I gave him that extra candy, and he kept his promise. He married me over 20 years ago.
I told you all that story was going to be one of inspiration and hope, didn't I? So you've heard from, family members here how they support these individuals. You've heard from Mr. Burgos, who served, time himself. We have seen states as diverse as Texas and West Virginia pass this issue. So I'm going to pivot my next question to Senator Irwin. Why is this reform important for Michigan right now?
Well, I'm afraid I stepped on this a little bit with my opening comments, right? I feel like I covered the waterfront in those comments and saying that, this is a moral imperative. We have to do this because it's the right thing to do. It's the only right way to treat our fellow human beings. If we really believe in rehabilitation and second chances, and we don't just believe in punishment, we have to do this. So that's a part of it. But I also think it's important to continue to talk about how much mass incarceration is costing the taxpayers. Right now in our state, we're spending well over 20% of our general fund on corrections. We spend more on corrections than we do on higher education. We spend more to deal with those problems than we do to prevent problems by giving folks a hand up and a chance at higher education. So, look, if we're going to continue this policy of having a tough on crime, not smart on crime approach in Michigan, if we're going to continue to be a state that has the longest prison sentences in the Great Lakes region, if we're going to continue to be a state that can't figure out who we're still mad at and who we're afraid of and sort that out, if we can't figure those things out, we're going to continue to waste way too much of our money investing in locking people up for longer than they ever need to be locked up. And then that costs us the opportunity to invest in people's success, to invest in the after-school programs, to invest in rebuilding our mental health system, to invest in actually solving the problems that lead to desperation and crime. That's what we need to do, but we can't do that unless we pull our head out of the sand, stop wasting incredible amounts of money, locking up people far too long, and to start to put those dollars, those billions of dollars, into investing in success.
Thank you, sir. So you just spoke to a bit of a public safety concern. So there's a recent study from Montclair State that states that there's a less than 1.14% recidivism rate of people who commit these type of crimes going home. So that means that there's nothing to fear, that men and women who serve these sentences are coming home and they're doing the right thing. You heard Jose Burgos earlier mention that he's a reentry specialist, that as soon as these individuals' feet hit the sidewalk, that he's there for them, investing in their success. Jose, what does it mean to see others like yourself succeed once they come back into society?
Oh man, it's a great feeling. It's a great feeling. Every time I see one of my brothers or one of my sisters come out here and succeed, I take this very personal. I take this very personal. Going in as a 16-year-old child, being told that you were going to spend the rest of your life, in prison. For me, it's very personal. And I think about all of you guys here who are parents. I'm sure each and every one of you probably have a child, or even yourself when you was a child, who did something wrong and asked for forgiveness. Not wanting to be defined by that one moment. In our cases, of course, it was more serious, and there was. So we're not saying that these guys are coming home or these guys is going to be a get out of jail a free card. But just giving people an opportunity, giving people hope, restoring that hope. And children, of all people and children, we have to understand these are kids that are literally being sentenced to life without parole, and a child who received that life sentence, and compared to an adult who received that sentence, is just in name, meaning that they're only serving life without parole each of them in name, but the child, of course, because he's 14 or 15 years old, he's going to end up serving a longer amount of time, you know what I'm saying, because his life expectancy. He might end up doing 50, 60, 70 years, you know what I'm saying? So for me, it's personal to make sure that these guys, these men and women who are coming home, to make sure that they succeed, because again, I just want to show that children are different, that children do come out here, grow out of crime, and it's really just giving them an opportunity and restoring their hope and allowing them an opportunity to come out here and be productive in society, as many of us have done throughout the country, not just in Michigan.
Thank you, Jose. I too know what it's like to be disappeared from society. I know what it's like to be that invisible person. So with that in mind, if there are any former life sentence children in the room, I want you to be recognized. I want you to walk out of the shadows. I don't want you to live an invisible life. So would you mind standing up and being recognized here today? If there is any one of you who has been home less than 6 months, please continue to stand so you can be recognized. If there's any one of you who've been home less than 90 days, please continue to stand. So I did that so that you would recognize that we're talking about children, and you see nothing but grown men and women stand. Some have gray hair. Some don't have any hair at all. And this is what we're doing to our children. Mrs. Waters, what would you like the panel and guests to know about your loved one and others like yourself who give and gave so much to ensure that individuals who are serving decades in prison have a successful reentry and that they know that they are loved upon return?
Thank you. For a successful reentry, you would need a mask, and I don't mean this type of mask. M-A-S-K. You would need M-A-S-K. M for mentoring, like-minded people like Jose over here, like Kim Woodson. I'm not sure if she's in here for Redeeming Kimberly, and people like Daryl Woods, people like my husband, Ronnie Waters. You do need mentoring. You need to anticipate the needs before that person is released. You know, they need their driver's license, they need the information for the driver's license, they need a phone, they need their medical information. So anticipate their needs before they're released. S, stability. They need home placement. They need to be in a peaceful environment where they can flourish and grow. They need kindness, such as the empathy we're all here for today. Dr. Maya Angelou said, I think we all have empathy. However, we may not have enough courage to display it. So I'm asking everyone in this room to have empathy and have the courage to display that empathy. Empathy to me is seeing with the eyes of another, listening with the ears of another, and feeling the heart of another. If you do that, you have a successful reentry.
Thank you for that. So I mentioned in my opening statement that I'm a part of a national organization, and part of the work that we do is man a national action network called ICANN, which is an acronym for the Incarcerated Children's Advocacy Network. And I have with me today my good friend and a colleague, Eddie Ellis, who's out in the crowd, who mans our ICANN network. And one of the things that we do is we focus on self-care, meaning that individuals who come home, we invest in their mental health, their physical well-being, because we want to ensure that they are successful. Eddie, if you don't mind, would you mind talking a bit about the services that we offer so that people would know that on all fronts of public safety, we ensure that men and women are coming home and have the wraparound services that they truly need. So I'm going to pass the mic to someone who's not a panelist, but what he has to say is equally important.
Thank you. Yes, I oversee work with family members that I call my brothers and sisters in ICANN. We have over 200 members in 29 states, including the District of Columbia. And 5 years ago, we started focusing on self-care. I had a friend who came home in 2006, after being exonerated, and he took his life after a few years being home. And me and this friend used to travel around the country to do trainings and speeches and all these things, but nobody cared about the trauma and the story that we keep bringing up and how it affects us. So we started a self-care environment where we brought in social workers. We had programs, and we took former life sentence children to locations where we can just learn from each other, grow, listen to the social worker and work through some things, whether it's forgiveness, vulnerability, understanding how to forgive and forget and move on with your life. And our second one actually was in Dexter, Michigan, where we brought out approximately 25 former life sentence children for 3 days on the water, and we paid for everything. We wanted them to be able to be there and learn and grow. We cried, we laughed. But we think it's important because when people come home, we've dealt with a whole lot before going to prison. And prison doesn't, lock you into trauma. All of us have dealt with trauma one way or another. And what's important to us to try to help us grow and move past the trauma and become more healthy. But what we understand is this: when we plant the seed of self-care, which is in turn community care, we started taking care of ourselves, our family, and our community. So it's a positive virus that we're trying to pass around about self-care, because our health matters. And we give so much to the community. And it's important that we're able to take care of ourselves and recognize why that's important. So thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. At this time, I would like to open the floor up for any questions that guests may have.
Good afternoon. I'm Minister Fuquay Bay. I have been working in prison reform for over 25 years after doing 8 years myself, not as a juvenile, but I was 21 years of age and did go into the Jackson State Prison, the biggest wall prison, I guess, in the United States, with all type of individuals. And I was in there for a period of 8 years. And during that time, I endured all type of different trauma. I was in direct contact with juvenile, what we call juvenile lifers. As some of you remember, back in the early 80s, they had a riot, a prison riot. And after that riot, they sent juvenile lifers into the Jackson State Prison. Very traumatic for our young people that were there. But prior to getting there, as I have been doing what we may say self-help. When I first went to prison, they offered skill sets. You had college in prison. You had ways of reforming people, so when they were integrated back into society, they were on somewhat the same level playing field as some of the people that were already there. They removed that. They removed that. So now they have no type of wraparound services. They have no type of a way of helping to reform. Matter of fact, I went to what they call the reformatory. The reformatory, to help reform people, give them some, coping skills, give them some life skills. They took that out of prisons. And now, at this particular time, the recidivism rate is much higher because they took away those services. We're talking about money. See, that money that they keep individuals incarcerated with, that same money could be spent back in the educational process to help people from when they come home, so that they'll feel a little bit more empowered and able to deal with some of the things in life. But not only that, somebody spoke about counseling. The Michigan Department of Corrections have let the people down because they're responsible for that too. Giving some people some counseling to come back into society. That's of the utmost importance, because don't just think, if you let somebody go, everything's going to be all right. They're dealing with the traumas. They're dealing with PTSD traumas. They had traumas, some of them, they put them in the institution in the beginning. So we have to be very mindful of that when we're talking about self-care, we're talking about these juvenile lifers, and we're talking about saving money. Let's save some money by educating those that have tripped along the way. Let's have some compassion for those that have tripped along the way and can help show other people to the light. Because so often people are in the darkness. And as you spoke, let them come out of the darkness. Let them know that you are somebody. And just one mistake in life is not a complete setback in life. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Questions, please. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Linda Sturmer, and I am still inmate number 757152. I was released 3 years ago on a wrongful conviction and awaiting retrial now. But I was in Huron Valley, and I watched juveniles come in and become victimized inside the prison walls. And I understand that we're doing a lot of things to reform the way that juveniles are sentenced. We also need to do some things to reform the way that juveniles are incarcerated. Because these young women go in and they fall prey, just like they were prey on the outside that led to their crime. These women don't have a chance when they get inside those walls. Michigan, Huron Valley, I can't speak for the men's facilities, but it is not a rehabilitative environment. You are throwing people away in an environment where it is nearly impossible for them to grow and change and flourish. But there are so many women in that prison who are lifers, not necessarily juvenile lifers, who take it so seriously and treat that environment as their community. They take these women under their wings, but there's so much negativity in there that is just oppressing these young people. We need to find a better way to incarcerate these young people so that they have a better chance to come out better people, because all we're doing is damaging damaged people in that environment. And to have people come out like LaWanda Hollister back there as a juvenile lifer woman is an amazing, amazing thing. You do not even know how hard it is to create a person like her in that environment.
Hello, Jacqueline Curry. I was formerly incarcerated, not as a juvenile. But I want to piggyback off of, I don't know if it was Mrs. Waters, but when they were saying what do they need in juveniles? What they need, if you have a family that are out and you're wondering, it's hard to deal with them, if you go through a lot, be strong. They need family support, community support. That is the most important thing. If you're just here and just give them a couple of dollars and go on about their business, that's not what you need. That's not what they need. What they need is your support. And to say this, far as jobs, and I do want to speak on this, when you're coming out, especially if you're just coming out, I don't know if you're in the Wayne County area. One thing I do like about, I like about Mayor Duggan, I'm from Oakland County, but a former DDOT bus driver. He opened up for the city of Detroit for ex-felons to be employed. He's bringing companies in, and he stated 3 things that have to be done, and that is 1, I have too many felons walking around the city of Wayne County. If you're outside of Wayne County, you can still get employment. They need to be incarcerated. I mean, not incarcerated, they need employment, sorry. They need employment. No, they don't need to be incarcerated, they need employment. I have veterans that's walking out. So it's veterans, citizens of Wayne County, but mostly felons. And so if you do need a job, if you're juvenile, it doesn't matter if you were formerly incarcerated, just make sure you can go on the website and apply for employment, because they did open that up to work for the city and the county of Wayne County.
I just want to say, my friend Rachel Brown here. She told me to tell you guys that she doesn't believe that any kid should be sentenced to life without parole.
I want to thank you all for your comments, especially you, Ms. Linda, because you said something that's very important about changed people and new people. So with that being said, all the children who were once sentenced to life without parole, very briefly, I would like for you to stand and let people know what you're doing now. You know, we've talked about the worst thing that you've ever done as a child. Briefly let them know what you're doing now.
My name is Edward Sanders. I go by the name of Buttercup. I'm a former juvenile life without parole. I served 43 years in Michigan prison. I went to prison in 1975, and I came home in 2017. When I came home, I first had to take and fight to take and get our good time because the present bill had a negative inclusion in there that said that even those that behaved well couldn't even get the good time. That kept me, that was a barrier. It kept me from doing something that I had dreamed while I was in prison, and that was to get on the college campus. After the ACLU and others helped us to take and remove that barrier, I got into the University of Michigan School of Social Work. And within less the time that it would take to take and finish parole, I finished my master's program. I am now a licensed social worker. I am doing what we want to have did for us, to take and provide treatment, to take and have proper advocacy, to do what the State Appellate Defender's Office is doing, which we wasn't intended to do. They're a post-conviction law firm. They provide reentry programs, and that's what most of the juvenile lifers are doing. This young man has a nonprofit in Inkster. This is reflective of our population, you know, the nature of that.
So we have a licensed social worker here.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamo. That's what I'm known by. I'm a regional ICON member, connector. My job is to help the men and women when they're coming home. I also work with Chance for Life, and I'm a reentry specialist for Chance for Life organization. I was just appointed as the Commissioner of Housing Development for the city of Inkster. And I run my own nonprofit organization where we feed between 700 families a week. It's called Rise and Sun Inc. So that's the work I do for the community.
Hello, my name is Lorenzo Harrell. I work for myself as a Braille transcriber. I transcribe Braille for blind people. And I also work at SADO, the State Appellate Defender's Office.
Again, welcome home.
Hi, my name is Jamal Brown, and I've been out less than 2 weeks now. And so, it's still early, but I'm surrounding myself with beautiful people like yourself and learning and soaking things up and reconnecting with my family. So it's still early, but I know it's a success, so I'm just happy to be here.
My name is Brandon Harrington. I've been out 4 months now. I'm currently employed. Just before I was released, I obtained an associate's degree in paralegal certification from Mott Community College and Adams State University, and I'm on my way to USA Trucking in a couple weeks.
Now, I'm fighting back tears with the thought that a judge once told these men that they could be thrown away. Oh, I'm sorry, Wanda. I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand.
My name is LaWanda Hollister, and I have been out 2 years, May 8th. And at the moment, I work for Avalon Housing. I'm a case manager. And it's been a long road, and I'll talk more about that when I speak a little later. But I'm attending Eastern right now, and I run a food truck which sells food inspired by food made inside the prison. And I go around and talk about the difficulties of re-entry for us. So that's it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just want to commend all my juvenile brothers and sisters about great things that they're doing out here. But I just want everybody to know that we're not extraordinary by any stretch of the imagination. There's so many people that's still locked in who deserve the same chance that we got, and just waiting for their opportunity to come out here and join society and start paying taxes and doing all the things, right things that we doing. So let's keep our focus on the people that's still locked up. And like I say, commend everybody. There's nothing extraordinary. There's so many left behind that need our help. And that's what we out here trying to do. We got a community in our lives, and we hold each other to a high standard, you know? So if somebody look like they gonna mess up, we on their head. So, because we know how delicate this issue is. Senator could tell you that. You know, so if somebody mess up, they're gonna hold it against all of us. So we're trying to get people to do the right thing, and everybody's in here been doing the right thing, but there's so many others that's locked up need that chance too.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Dion Rigonil. My question is, you know, it's a lot of juvenile lifers that were sentenced and that got resentenced, but some of those juvenile lifers that's out and some that's still incarcerated have co-defendants. Now, I got an example. My nephew is doing a life without parole sentence for aiding and abetting in a felony murder. The person that actually did the crime, not per se the crime, but the act of murder, got resentenced. So that leaves two people that's in prison. The lookout guy that was at the age he was, I think he was 19 at the age, he just stood outside looking out. My nephew that went inside the facility that was robbing the place, his act was just taking the money out, but the actual shooter is now coming back out to society. The two people that's left behind doing a life bit sentence for just being there at a crime for a felony murder as an aid and abetter. What is it that the organizations that's here now are working to do to get the aid and abetter from the felony murder that was at almost at the same age of the juvenile? That's my question. What is it that Lansing, or what is it that the organizations are doing to get those people back out? Say, like, if I did a crime and my rappy is still left behind, I did the murder, but I'm coming home, but I know it was my fault, my act, from him being incarcerated for the rest of his life. What is it that we can do to get those people home?
I am not an attorney here in Michigan, so I won't answer that question, but you know, attorneys, advocates here, you heard the question. If you could answer this for him personally, because it sounds, you know, very personal. I see a hand up back there.
There's a coalition of organizations working on a policy called Second that would make everybody in the Department of Corrections eligible to be resentenced after a certain number of years.
So, in closing statements, I'm going to ask Senator Irwin to.
I just want the part going to be what you said. I want to see where we at with the legislation and what we can do to be able to help it. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to recognize one in the back.
Kimberly Woodson.
Kimberly Woodson.
Stand up, Kim.
It doesn't look like she wants to be recognized.
Thank you, Jacqueline Curry. I appreciate you, sister. Hi, everyone. I'm Kimberly Woodson. I am a juvenile lifer who served 29 years. I am the founder and director of Redeeming Kimberly, who as of April the 8th will be the first empowerment prep transitional program for residents in Genesee County. It will be an 8-week program, and we will transition them and help them to either enter into prison or hopefully back home. But we do agree they need to be prepped for the decision that's going to be made in their life. So also I am the campaign director for Good Time to be reinstated back into the Michigan Department of Corrections. Our petitions is outside. I'm not asking everybody to support it. I'm asking you to give us a fair chance to have a democratic decision on the ballot. Just let us have a choice to vote how we want to determine how our residents go inside the Department of Uncorrections and let them do their time with dignity and respect and earn their way back home. Michigan is one of 6 states that does not offer incentives. And I didn't want to mic because I know all I care about is good time right now, and I didn't want to take up the time. So God bless and thank you.
So, in conclusion of our panel about abolishing life without parole for children, I'm going to leave our closing comments to Senator Irwin.
Thank you, Eric. It's a big responsibility. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your interest and activism around these issues. And thank you for being willing to speak out because, I think the question was asked, I believe it was by Mr. Woods over here, what's the prognosis? How does it look? Well, thanks to some of the great folks here who've done some great work. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Preston. Thank you so many other people who've been part of this already. We've got a good group of bipartisan sponsors. So that gives us a chance in a very conservative legislature of getting some movement on this important issue of ending juvenile life without parole. But it's only going to happen if every one of you in this room speak to your legislators and ask them a very important question. Do you support this legislation? If so, why? If not, why not? And, look, we're entering an election year. This is the perfect time to be asking your state representative. It's a perfect time to be asking your state senator. And it's a perfect time to be asking the people who want to serve as your next state representative or your next state senator. Now, when I came up here, I don't want to put you on blast, Eric, but you were like, I don't want to put you on the spot. Is this okay with you? Please put your legislators on the spot. Put people like me on the spot all the time. We signed up for this. We deserve it. So get out there in your community and ask the question. Ask your legislators, do you support this? Ask your candidates, do you support this? And then, when you're done doing that, and you're done making sure that they provide a clear answer, because don't let them ride that fence, after that, then reach out to your friends, reach out to your family, encourage them to make that call, encourage them to send an email to their legislator, and ask your senators, do you support Senate Bill 848 through 851? Those are the bill numbers. Senate Bill 848 through 851. 848, 849, 850, and 851 are the 4 bills that we need to end juvenile life without parole. And the great thing about this issue is that I know there's a lot of folks in this room who care about this deeply and care about a lot of other issues too, whether it's fixing our mental health system or other criminal justice issues. The great thing is that when we get the ball rolling on a policy like pulling back from this immoral position that we have in Michigan of enacting a juvenile life without parole bill, when we can get motion on that, we're also engaging them on a conversation about these other important policies. Whether it's second look, whether it's good time, whether it's just decent conditions in our prisons where people can call their loved ones, eat a decent meal, right? All of these things are connected. And our biggest enemy is that people aren't talking about this. Is that this isn't part of the campaigns. And the biggest problem is that when people like me are running for office, we don't get asked this question at the town hall. So make sure this question gets asked. Make sure that every single person who's seeking office, whether it's for legislator or county prosecutor or anything else, answer these questions. Go on the record. Tell us, what do you think? Do you believe in second chances? Or do you believe in endless punishment?
This concludes our panel discussion. I now turn it over to our host, Joshua Holmes.
Let's give a round of applause to our panelists again. I mean, just to add to what the senator just said, one thing that everybody should consider is we have 83 counties in Michigan. A lot of times the representatives and senators that hear the most are from about 5 of those counties. And we all know people across the state, and we need to get all those people in all those counties talking to their legislators, not just the ones here. And some people get cynical about calling your legislator, but I'll tell you, I can tell you story after story after story about where it's made a difference. And I understand a lot of times it doesn't, but a lot of times it does. I've been involved with, I think it's somewhere between 35 and 40 pieces of legislation federally and in the state that have passed. And in every single one of those cases, I can tell you a story about someone who called their legislator and made a difference. So I think what the senator is saying is spot on, and we need to make sure that we mobilize our people all across the state, not just from Detroit and Jackson and Flint and here in Lansing and Grand Rapids, but everywhere you know someone, get them calling and talking to their legislators. All right, one other thing I want to talk about now that and you all can, if you want to stay up, you can, but if you, you can move on. The other thing I'll talk about right before we take a little break here is, I didn't put a panel together for this, but how many people in this room have had someone inside that they've had to pay phone fees for? Or have had to pay phone fees? All right, well, one of the things we're really working hard on right now is trying to convince the Appropriations Committee to reduce phone fees to 0. I mean, almost everybody in this room knows that the people who pay those phone fees are the families of the folks inside, and that most of them have lost a wage earner who's now inside and don't have the money to be paying those fees. So, as that's coming down the pike, stay with us on that too, because we're going to try to get it done through appropriations, and then we're going to try again to get it done through legislation. But let's get phone fees to 0 this year if we can. All right, we'll take a little break and here in about, well, it looks like 5 minutes, but it might be closer to 10. We're going to start talking about the conditions in Huron Valley, which I know everybody is concerned about. Thanks so much.